Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of a nation that prides itself on freedom, opportunity, and democracy, today I want to reveal to you a truth, a law so profound, so silent, that most of us never even notice it. Yet this law governs the rise and fall of nations, the fortunes and failures of leaders, and the very future of your life, your children, and your grandchildren. This is the hidden law of political power, and I assure you it is being ignored by the majority of Americans. This is not a speech about partisan politics. This is not about party lines or election campaigns. This is a discourse about the principles, the mindset, the invisible forces that shape who truly wields power in America, and how understanding this law will position you not just as an observer, but as a decisive actor in your own destiny. Power is never given. It is not offered on a silver platter. Power is created, cultivated, and maintained by those who understand the invisible rules of influence, persuasion, and vision. And yet, the average citizen remains blind to these rules. Most of us believe that leadership is about popularity, about charisma, about the ability to speak well or to dominate headlines. But true political power, real, transformative power, is born in the mind long before it manifests in the halls of Washington, the chambers of state legislatures, or the boardrooms where policy is decided. Consider this every significant shift in American history, from the founding of this nation to the abolition of slavery, to the civil rights movement, to economic booms and crashes, has been driven not solely by money, not solely by force, not solely by public opinion, but by the application of a law so subtle, yet so decisive that ignoring it guarantees irrelevance. That law is this: power flows to those who master the inner world before they attempt to master the outer world. Let that sink in for a moment. The inner world, your thoughts, your clarity of purpose, your unwavering faith in a vision that transcends obstacles, is where power is first conceived. Leaders, those who shape the destiny of millions, do not stumble into influence. They build it meticulously in the silence of reflection, the discipline of planning, and the courage to act when others hesitate. Every American, whether they realize it or not, is engaged in a struggle for influence. The politicians you see on television, the policies debated in Congress, the economic forces shaping your livelihood, all are part of a larger, invisible battlefield. And in this battle, ignorance is the deadliest enemy. Now, you may ask, how does this law apply to me? I am not a politician. I do not hold office. But let me assure you, you are more involved than you think. Every conversation you have, every vote you cast, every choice you make about what to support, believe, or resist contributes to the momentum of power. Power is a current, a force that responds to vision, decisiveness, and clarity of purpose. And those who understand it, not just theoretically, but in action, control it. Let me share with you the first principle of this hidden law. Clarity of purpose is the bedrock of political influence. Without a definite purpose, without a crystal clear vision of what you intend to achieve or support, your energy is scattered. You become a leaf in the wind, blown in the direction of whichever opinion is loudest, whichever media outlet commands your attention, whichever lobbyist whispers the most persuasively. True leaders, however, are never swayed by temporary noise. They anchor themselves in a vision so compelling, so aligned with truth and justice, that it becomes an irresistible force. Clarity of purpose allows you to see beyond the illusions of the moment. It allows you to distinguish between policies that are fleetingly popular and those that will shape the nation's destiny. It allows you to recognize manipulation for what it is and respond with informed action rather than emotional reaction. The second principle of this hidden law is mastery over emotion. Powerful leaders are not those who can shout the loudest or dominate the debate. They are those who control their inner states. Anger, fear, frustration, and impatience are the enemies of influence. They cloud judgment, erode credibility, and give your opponents the advantage. When the masses are swayed by outrage, it is the calm, composed, focused individual who rises to leadership. Consider this: every political scandal, every collapse of a leader can be traced back to a failure to master self. Those who act impulsively, who allow personal ambition or resentment to dictate decisions, become victims of the very system they seek to control. Meanwhile, those who maintain poise, who calculate, who act with deliberate strategy, accumulate power quietly, invisibly, and irreversibly. The third principle is the law of influence through value. Do not mistake power for coercion. True influence is earned, not taken. Every leader who commands respect does so because they create value. Value for their followers, value for their constituents, value for the nation itself. Napoleon Hill taught that success leaves clues. Observe the most effective politicians. The movers of history, they appeal to the aspirations of others. They create opportunities. They inspire action through a combination of vision and service. If you want to be influential, you must ask yourself, what value do I contribute? How do my ideas, my actions, my vision elevate others? Because in politics, as in life, influence is the currency of power. And those who hoard it, manipulate it, or use it only for personal gain will find their influence evaporating when it is tested. The fourth principle is the power of strategic alliance. No leader succeeds alone. The idea that a lone genius can change the course of a nation without allies is a myth. Those who understand the hidden law of political power cultivate relationships, not for personal advantage alone, but to multiply their capacity to act. Every alliance, every partnership, every coalition, when aligned with principle and vision, magnifies influence exponentially. But be wary, strategic alliances must be grounded in discernment. Power attracts opportunists, sycophants, and those motivated solely by greed. The wise leader aligns with those whose values resonate, whose intentions are genuine, and whose abilities complement their own. The strength of a leader is not in the number of followers, but in the quality of connections. The fifth principle is decisive action guided by principle. Power accumulates when thought is translated into action. Ideas, visions, and strategies are meaningless without execution. And yet, action must be guided by principle, or it risks destruction. The law of political power rewards those who act swiftly, courageously, and in alignment with a higher vision, and punishes those who hesitate or act selfishly. History is filled with opportunities lost to indecision. Nations falter, movements fail, fortunes vanish, not because the plan was weak, but because leaders hesitated. In the crucible of political life, hesitation is the silent assassin of destiny. The sixth principle is perception is reality, shape it wisely. In the realm of politics, perception often determines outcomes more than facts. Those who understand the hidden law of power know that controlling the narrative, communicating effectively, and establishing credibility is as critical as policy itself. Influence is amplified by clarity, by consistent messaging, by demonstrating integrity, and by projecting the confidence of someone who has mastered their inner world. But remember, perception must align with substance. Deception may yield temporary victories, but true power, lasting transformative power, demands authenticity. The mind of the public is quick to detect incongruity between words and actions, and when trust is lost, influence disappears. The seventh principle is the relentless pursuit of knowledge. Ignorance is the nemesis of power. Those who understand politics only through headlines, social media soundbite, or secondhand gossip are doomed to irrelevance. True leaders immerse themselves in history, in economics, in human psychology, in law and strategy. They understand not only the mechanics of government, but the forces that shape society, the fears, hopes, and desires of the people. Knowledge grants foresight, foresight grants advantage, and advantage, when applied with courage and wisdom, becomes power. Now, let us confront a truth few dare to admit. Most Americans are ignoring this law. They debate, they complain, they vote, yet they do so without understanding the forces at play. They are reactive, not proactive. They are manipulated by media, swayed by emotion, and distracted by trivialities. And while the masses sleep, those who understand and apply these principles are quietly building influence, shaping policy, and determining the future. Do not misunderstand me. This is not a call for cynicism, nor a celebration of elitism. On the contrary, understanding the hidden law of political power empowers you to act with intention, to contribute meaningfully, and to rise above the manipulation that undermines liberty and opportunity. It gives you the tools to recognize leadership that is genuine, to see through deception, and to participate in shaping a nation that reflects the highest ideals of freedom, prosperity, and justice. Consider this: the power to influence begins with one mind, one vision, one decisive act. History proves that monumental change often starts with a single individual who refused to accept mediocrity, who refused to allow fear to dictate action, who embraced the discipline of thought, and who acted in accordance with principle. I urge you, then, to cultivate your inner world. Define your purpose with absolute clarity. Master your emotions. Create value. Build alliances strategically. Act decisively. shape perception ethically, pursue knowledge relentlessly. These are not abstract concepts. These are practical tools for anyone seeking to understand the real forces of political power. And remember this, power is not inherently evil. Power is neutral. It can be used to liberate or to oppress, to uplift or to manipulate. The difference lies in the character of the person who wields it. And the character of a person is forged in the mind, in the habits of thought, in the courage to align action with principle, and in the refusal to surrender to fear, complacency, or greed. Every American has the opportunity to awaken to this law. Every citizen can rise above the noise, see clearly the patterns that govern leadership, and act in a way that contributes to the prosperity and freedom of the nation. Ignorance is optional. Inaction is optional. Obedience to circumstance is optional. But understanding, mastery, and purposeful action, these are the keys to influence that endures. So ask yourself, not tomorrow, not next year, but today, are you prepared to see beyond the illusions? Are you ready to cultivate the inner mastery that precedes political power? Are you willing to act with courage, principle, and clarity in a world where so many act blindly, emotionally, and selfishly? The hidden law of political power is not a mystery reserved for the elite. It is a law accessible to any mind willing to discipline itself, to rise above distraction, and to embrace the reality that influence begins within. The destiny of a nation and the destiny of your life hinges upon this understanding. Your awareness, your decisions, your actions. These are the instruments of change. And in recognizing the hidden law, you align yourself with a force far greater than circumstance, far greater than fear, far greater than the manipulation of fleeting headlines. You align yourself with the eternal principle that governs leadership, influence, and destiny itself. The invisible battle for power rages all around us, and those who ignore it will be swept aside. Those who recognize it, master it, and apply it with unwavering purpose will shape not only their own lives, but the future of a nation. And so, the question remains not whether this law exists, not whether it is real, but whether you will awaken to it, embrace it, and act in accordance with it. The future does not wait for the unprepared, and power favors the mind that is clear, the heart that is disciplined, and the soul that is courageous. Today I want to speak to you about a force so potent, so decisive, and yet so often overlooked that it quietly determines the course of history, the rise of leaders, the fate of policies, and ultimately the destiny of every American. That force is clarity of purpose, and when applied to political influence, it is nothing less than the secret engine behind leadership, power, and the ability to shape the world around you. It may surprise you to hear this, but clarity of purpose is not a skill taught in schools, not a topic debated on cable news, and not something you are likely to learn from casual conversation. It is an internal compass, an unwavering focus, a mental discipline that allows individuals to see beyond the chaos, beyond the noise, and beyond the distractions that occupy the minds of ordinary citizens. It is the foundation upon which political influence is built, and without it, even the most talented, charismatic, or ambitious person will struggle to leave a mark on history. Consider for a moment the leaders who have shaped nations. Those who have succeeded in altering the course of events did not simply act randomly. They were not propelled by whim or by the fleeting opinions of the masses. Every significant political accomplishment in history, every groundbreaking law, every transformative policy, every revolutionary movement was preceded by a mind that had achieved perfect clarity of purpose. The vision was defined. The objective was understood. The path was mapped, even if the obstacles seemed insurmountable. Clarity of purpose, my friends, is the engine of persistence. It fuels action when hope seems distant, when opposition is fierce, and when doubt threatens to paralyze the most determined minds. Without a definite purpose, the individual is like a ship adrift on a stormy sea, tossed by every wave of opinion, every gust of circumstance, and every passing trend. But with clarity of purpose, the same individual becomes an unstoppable force, navigating storms with confidence, precision, and resilience. Now you may ask, how does clarity of purpose translate into political influence? The answer lies in the way humans respond to certainty, vision, and conviction. People are drawn to those who know exactly what they want, who can articulate it with precision, and who are willing to pursue it with unshakable determination. In politics, this truth is amplified. The electorate, the voters, the supporters, even your opponents, All sense when a person acts from conviction rather than convenience. Clarity communicates strength. Clarity inspires trust. Clarity separates leaders from followers. Let us examine the mechanics of clarity. To achieve true political influence, you must first define your purpose in terms so exact that no ambiguity remains. This is not about vague intentions, fleeting goals, or momentary ambitions. This is about understanding with absolute certainty the change you wish to bring about, the principles you will defend, and the results you intend to achieve. A leader without such definition is like a torch without a flame, capable of illumination only intermittently and easily extinguished by the winds of opposition. Once your purpose is defined, it must become the lens through which all decisions, actions, and strategies are filtered. Every policy proposal, every campaign decision, every public statement should reflect the clarity of your purpose. This alignment signals authenticity to those around you. People recognize when someone is acting from a clear, consistent vision versus when they are acting reactively, opportunistically, or merely following the whims of circumstance. Authenticity breeds influence. Influence is the foundation of power. And power, when guided by principle and sustained by vision, shapes nations. History provides us with countless examples. Consider the leaders who faced overwhelming opposition yet persisted because their purpose was unshakable. Their clarity enabled them to rally supporters, overcome obstacles, and achieve what others deemed impossible. Their opponents, often equally talented, faltered because they lacked the focus and precision that clarity provides. This demonstrates a truth so profound that it cannot be ignored. Clarity of purpose does not merely guide action. It magnifies influence exponentially. But achieving clarity is not simple. It demands rigorous self-examination, relentless questioning, and the courage to strip away distractions, illusions, and superficial goals. Too often, individuals confuse ambition with purpose. They chase popularity, wealth, prestige, or temporary success, believing these to be ends in themselves. They may gain fleeting attention, but true influence, the kind that shapes laws, sways public opinion, and defines eras, cannot be built on anything less than a well-defined, deeply held purpose. The process begins with introspection. You must ask yourself the most fundamental questions. What do I truly stand for? What change do I wish to see in the world? What legacy do I intend to leave behind? And perhaps most importantly, what am I willing to sacrifice to see this purpose realized? The answers to these questions form the blueprint of clarity, the internal map that guides every decision and action. Once defined, purpose must be communicated with precision. This is where many fail. They may possess clarity in their minds, but falter in expressing it. Influence is not solely about knowing what you want. It is about inspiring others to align with your vision. Your purpose must resonate, it must appeal to shared values, and it must evoke a response that drives action. This requires mastery of language, empathy, and a deep understanding of human motivation. A leader who cannot articulate their purpose effectively remains powerless, regardless of how pure or compelling their vision may be. Clarity of purpose also shapes strategy. Political influence is not achieved by random acts or reactive responses. It is cultivated through deliberate planning, informed by insight, and executed with precision. When you know exactly what you are seeking to accomplish, you can identify the resources, alliances, and tactics required to achieve it. You can anticipate obstacles, preempt opposition, and seize opportunities before others even recognize their potential. Strategy without purpose is aimless. Purpose without strategy is impotent. Together, they create a force that cannot be ignored. Another critical dimension is resilience. Politics is a battlefield often marked by setbacks, criticism, and failure. Without clarity of purpose, even minor obstacles can derail progress. With clarity, setbacks become temporary, criticism becomes feedback, and failure becomes a lesson rather than a verdict. The mind anchored in purpose interprets every event through the lens of long-term objectives, allowing the individual to persist, adapt, and ultimately prevail. It is essential to understand that clarity of purpose is not static. It evolves with knowledge, experience, and the shifting dynamics of society. A leader must remain vigilant, continuously refining their purpose to align with emerging realities while remaining true to core principles. This balance between adaptability and consistency is what distinguishes effective leaders from those who are reactive, inconsistent, or opportunistic. Furthermore, clarity of purpose enhances credibility. In the world of politics, where trust is scarce and skepticism is rampant, Leaders who consistently act in accordance with their defined purpose earn the respect of allies, the attention of opponents, and the confidence of the public. Credibility is influence. Influence is power, and power, when used responsibly, transforms society. Clarity also empowers decision-making. In the absence of a defined purpose, decisions are often delayed, compromised, or swayed by external pressures. When purpose is clear, decisions become decisive, focused, and aligned with long-term objectives. Leaders who act decisively are perceived as strong, competent, and visionary, qualities that attract support and magnify influence. Moreover, clarity of purpose shapes perception. The public, consciously or unconsciously, senses when a leader's actions are guided by conviction rather than convenience. Consistent alignment between stated purpose and actions communicates integrity, inspires confidence, and fosters loyalty. Conversely, inconsistency erodes trust, undermines authority, and diminishes influence. The power of perception is amplified when clarity guides every word, gesture, and decision. It is also critical to recognize the role of ethical alignment in clarity of purpose. Influence built on principle, fairness, and integrity is enduring. Influence built on manipulation, deceit, or self-interest is fleeting. The clarity of purpose that integrates ethical considerations establishes a foundation for legitimacy, public support, and lasting impact. Leadership is not merely the pursuit of objectives. It is the pursuit of objectives in a manner that commands respect, earns trust, and elevates society. Another dimension of clarity is focus. The distractions of modern life, media noise, social pressure, personal ambition, and competing priorities threaten to fragment attention and dilute influence. Clarity of purpose acts as a filter, directing energy, resources, and effort toward what truly matters. It allows leaders to prioritize initiatives, concentrate on high-impact actions, and avoid being diverted by trivial or ephemeral matters. Focus amplifies effectiveness. Focus magnifies influence. Clarity of purpose also fosters collaboration. When a leader's vision is defined, communicated, and compelling, it attracts allies who share the same values, aspirations, or objectives. Strategic alliances are formed not out of convenience, but because others recognize the clarity, strength, and potential of the vision. Collaboration multiplies influence, turning individual efforts into collective action capable of transforming communities, states, and nations. Consider for a moment the consequences of lacking clarity. A politician without purpose is easily manipulated by interest groups, swayed by public opinion, and distracted by opposition. Policies are inconsistent, messaging is muddled, and trust is eroded. Supporters become frustrated, opponents gain advantage, and influence diminishes. In contrast, leaders with clarity cut through the noise, inspire devotion, and command authority. The difference between success and irrelevance often lies not in talent, resources, or circumstances, but in the presence or absence of clarity of purpose. Clarity also shapes resilience in the face of adversity. Political influence is tested by crises, scandals, and opposition. Without a defined purpose, setbacks can lead to despair, panic, or capitulation. With clarity, setbacks are reframed as temporary obstacles, feedback is valued, and perseverance becomes natural. The mind anchored in purpose interprets every challenge as an opportunity to reinforce vision, refine strategy, and demonstrate leadership. Moreover, clarity of purpose accelerates growth. Leaders who know exactly what they aim to achieve invest time, energy, and resources in the most effective ways. They learn faster, adapt more efficiently, and make progress more rapidly. Their influence grows exponentially, not linearly, because every action is intentional, every decision aligned, and every effort magnified by focus. It is also essential to recognize that clarity of purpose is contagious. When a leader embodies a defined, compelling vision, it inspires others to seek their own clarity. Teams, communities, and even entire populations can be galvanized by the example of a leader who acts with conviction, discipline, and unwavering focus. Influence spreads not only through persuasion, but through the visible demonstration of clarity in thought, word, and deed. Finally, clarity of purpose is the antidote to indecision, confusion, and drift. In a world saturated with noise, misinformation, and competing narratives, the individual who maintains a clear vision stands out. They are the ones who are heard, who are followed, and who are remembered. They are the ones who transform intention into reality, aspiration into achievement, and vision into influence. And so, citizens, the question is not whether clarity of purpose matters. It is indisputable that it does. The real question is whether you will cultivate it, nurture it, and apply it in the realm of political influence. Will you allow distraction, indecision, and ambiguity to dictate your actions, or will you anchor your mind, define your purpose, and act with the precision and determination that transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results? The time for hesitation has passed. The world rewards those who act with conviction, who think with clarity, and who pursue their objectives with relentless focus. Influence is not an accident. Leadership is not a lottery, and political power is not bestowed arbitrarily. It is the outcome of disciplined thought, defined purpose, and strategic action. Clarity of purpose shapes political influence because it defines direction, magnifies energy, builds credibility, accelerates decision-making, inspires loyalty, fosters collaboration, and ensures that every action is aligned with long-term objectives. Without it, even the most talented individuals are vulnerable to distraction, opposition, and failure. With it, the seemingly impossible becomes attainable, the overlooked becomes visible, and the ordinary is transformed into the extraordinary. I want to speak to you today about a force that is invisible, silent, yet more powerful than armies, wealth, or influence. It is the force that determines whether a leader rises or falls, whether a movement succeeds or fails, whether a life achieves greatness or settles for mediocrity. That force, my friends, is emotion, and more precisely, the mastery of emotion, the ability to govern one's own inner state, to remain unwavering amid chaos, and to channel feelings into purposeful action, is the silent weapon of all true leaders. Many people misunderstand the nature of emotion. They see it as something to be indulged, a fleeting impulse, a storm that sweeps through the mind and body uncontrollably. They assume that courage is the absence of fear, that decisiveness comes naturally, or that composure is something you are either born with or without. Nothing could be further from the truth. Emotion, like any other energy, can be understood, directed, and transformed. It is not something to suppress, but something to harness. And mastery of this force separates those who lead from those who follow, those who succeed from those who stagnate. Consider the world around us. Every significant decision in politics, business, and society is driven in some form by emotion. Fear compels nations to act rashly. Anger drives revolutions and riots. Pride fuels ambition, and hope inspires movements that change the course of history. Leaders who fail to understand the currents of emotion, both in themselves and in others, are like sailors navigating a stormy sea without a compass. They are tossed, battered, and ultimately undone. But those who master their emotions move with the precision of a captain guiding a ship through turbulent waters, turning challenges into opportunities, obstacles into stepping stones, and opposition into fuel for their vision. The first step in mastering emotions is self-awareness. One cannot control what one does not recognize. The mind is a field of subtle reactions, impulses, and responses, many of which operate below the level of conscious thought. Anger flares before reason has a chance to speak. Fear whispers in the shadows before courage can respond, and doubt creeps in before confidence is fully asserted. A leader who ignores these signals becomes a slave to circumstance. But a leader who observes, acknowledges, and studies their emotions gains insight into patterns, triggers, and tendencies. Self-awareness is the lens through which mastery becomes possible. But awareness alone is not enough. Awareness without discipline is like knowing the tide is rising, but refusing to build a seawall. The second principle of emotional mastery is deliberate control. To control an emotion does not mean to deny it, suppress it, or act mechanically without feeling. Control means to acknowledge the emotion, understand its origin, and decide consciously how to respond. A leader may feel fear, but fear becomes fuel rather than a hindrance. Anger may arise, but anger is transformed into clarity, courage, or decisive action. Every emotion has a purpose. The key is learning how to convert raw emotional energy into constructive action. This leads us to the third principle, emotional intelligence in leadership. True leaders understand not only their own emotional states, but the emotional states of others. Politics, business, and life itself are not abstract chessboards. They are composed of human beings with desires, fears, and motivations. A leader who can perceive, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others gains influence, trust, and loyalty. They can calm unrest, inspire effort, and persuade without coercion. They speak not only to minds, but to hearts, and it is the heart that moves first, long before reason follows. Consider history. Every transformative leader, from Lincoln to Churchill, from Mandela to Roosevelt, wielded this silent weapon. They faced crises that would have overwhelmed ordinary individuals, yet they remained composed, focused, and intentional. They understood the stakes not only intellectually but emotionally. They knew when to instill hope, when to channel anger into action, and when to stand firm in the face of fear. Their mastery of emotion allowed them to make decisions that seemed impossible to those around them, decisions that shaped nations and defined eras. The fourth principle is the power of patience and perspective. Emotion, if unrestrained, is often impulsive. A heated word, a rash decision, a moment of frustration can undo months or years of preparation. Leaders who master emotions understand the value of timing. They know that a pause, an intentional delay before responding, can transform conflict into collaboration, chaos into order, and opportunity into advantage. They cultivate perspective, recognizing that immediate feelings are not always aligned with long-term objectives. Mastery of emotion is mastery over impulsivity. It is the ability to act deliberately, not react recklessly. Equally important is resilience in the face of adversity. Every leader encounters setbacks, failures, and criticism. Those who lack emotional mastery crumble under pressure, their decisions clouded by panic, resentment, or self-doubt. Those who have cultivated mastery respond with calm determination. They recognize that adversity is not an enemy but a teacher, that failure is not final but a signal to adjust, and that criticism, no matter how harsh, can be a source of insight. Emotional resilience is the shield that protects vision, purpose, and influence in a world that is unpredictable and often unforgiving. Another crucial aspect is the intentional cultivation of positive emotions. Gratitude, optimism, and confidence are not mere niceties. They are strategic assets. A leader who projects hope demonstrates appreciation, and radiates confidence influences others profoundly. Emotions are contagious. Just as fear can spread like wildfire, courage and conviction inspire collective effort. By consciously nurturing positive emotional states within themselves, leaders generate momentum, loyalty, and cohesion among their teams, their constituents, and their allies. The sixth principle is detachment from destructive influences. In the age of constant news, social media, and relentless public scrutiny, it is easy for leaders to be consumed by outrage, distraction, or despair. Mastery of emotion requires discernment, choosing which information to internalize, which opinions to consider, and which influences to resist. Leaders must guard their minds as they would a fortress, allowing only those ideas, feedback, and experiences that serve their purpose and strengthen their resolve. Emotional mastery is as much about exclusion as inclusion. It is about protecting the inner world to preserve clarity, judgment, and effectiveness. We must also address the transformation of fear into action. Fear is often seen as the enemy of leadership, yet it is one of the most potent forces when understood and directed. Fear signals awareness of risk, highlights vulnerability, and compels preparation. The leader who masters emotions does not eliminate fear, they convert it into vigilance, strategy, and courage. Fear becomes a tool rather than a chain, a guide rather than a barrier. Those who can harness fear act decisively when others hesitate, move boldly when others retreat, and innovate when others cling to safety. Equally, anger and frustration, if mismanaged, can destroy influence, but if mastered, they can ignite transformation. Anger, when directed without malice, can highlight injustice, demand accountability, and inspire reform. Frustration, when processed thoughtfully, identifies obstacles and clarifies priorities. Leaders who master their emotions recognize that energy must be channeled, not wasted, that every feeling carries power if it is handled with awareness and intention. The development of emotional memory is another profound aspect of mastery. Leaders must learn to recall emotional experiences, both successes and failures, and to analyze them for insight. This practice builds intuition, informs future decisions, and strengthens the capacity to respond to crises with poise. Emotional memory is the internal compass that guides judgment, shapes strategy, and reinforces resilience. By studying past emotional reactions, leaders anticipate pitfalls, understand human behavior, and refine their influence over others. We must also acknowledge the role of self-discipline in emotional mastery. Discipline is the bridge between thought and action, the structure that channels emotional energy into purpose. Without discipline, awareness is impotent, insight is wasted, and potential remains dormant. Discipline allows a leader to maintain composure under attack, to act consistently in alignment with principle. and to persist when the temptation to surrender or react impulsively is strongest. It is the backbone of emotional intelligence and the foundation of influence. Furthermore, the integration of reason and intuition amplifies emotional mastery. Leaders must not rely solely on logic or intellect. They must also trust the subtleties of gut feeling, emotional resonance, and instinct shaped by experience. Emotion, when married to reason, becomes a guiding force that balances courage with caution, action with reflection, and ambition with responsibility. Emotional mastery does not reject feeling. It elevates it into informed, strategic, and ethical leadership. The subtle art of emotional timing is equally critical. Knowing when to speak, when to listen, when to act, and when to withhold action can determine the outcome of negotiations, elections, and policies. Leaders who fail to recognize the power of timing often squander influence or escalate conflict unnecessarily. Those who master their emotions read the currents of human reaction, anticipate responses, and choose moments of intervention that maximize impact and minimize resistance. A master of emotions also understands the role of humility in sustaining influence. Pride and ego are constant threats, tempting leaders to act impulsively, to dismiss advice, or to overreach. Humility, when combined with confidence, allows leaders to remain grounded, to seek counsel, to admit mistakes, and to maintain credibility. It tempers ambition, balances decision-making, and ensures that influence is exercised responsibly rather than recklessly. Visualization and emotional rehearsal are tools that further refine mastery. Leaders who mentally simulate challenges, rehearse responses, and envision success cultivate emotional readiness. This practice reduces fear, strengthens confidence, and enhances the ability to respond creatively under pressure. The mind is a laboratory, and emotion is the energy that drives experiments toward mastery. By repeatedly engaging in emotional rehearsal, leaders train themselves to navigate crises with composure, to persuade with clarity, and to act with precision. Finally, let us not underestimate the ripple effect of emotional mastery. One leader's composure, clarity, and courage inspire countless others. Teams, communities, and nations respond to emotional signals far more than to directives or instructions. Mastering emotions amplifies influence exponentially because it elevates those around the leader, creating an ecosystem of resilience, focus, and purpose. In essence, emotional mastery is not only a personal weapon, it is a force that transforms environments, shapes outcomes, and leaves a legacy that endures long after one individual has passed. Today, I want to speak to you about a principle so essential, so transformative, that few truly grasp it, yet it underlies every lasting success, every enduring relationship, and every powerful leader in history. This principle is simple in words, but profound in application value over coercion. We live in a world where power is often measured by force. We see it in politics, in business, in social interactions, and even in personal relationships. People attempt to dominate, to manipulate, to compel others to their will. They believe influence comes from intimidation, control, or fear. They mistake noise for authority, aggression for respect, and compliance for loyalty. But this is a false power, a fragile power, a power that crumbles the moment opposition rises or circumstance shifts. True influence, the kind that lasts, the kind that shapes nations, organizations, and destinies, is earned. It is cultivated through value, through service, through authenticity, through the creation of something meaningful that others cannot ignore, refuse, or discard. Influence built on coercion is temporary. Influence built on value endures. Consider the leaders history remembers. Think of Lincoln, who guided a nation through its darkest hour, not through threats, but through vision and moral clarity. Think of Eleanor Roosevelt, who inspired millions not by force, but by empathy, insight, and advocacy. Think of innovators like Henry Ford, who changed the lives of countless people not by bullying, but by creating value, mobility, jobs, opportunity, and progress. The law is universal. The person who gives value accumulates influence automatically. The more lives you improve, the more trust you earn, the more loyalty you command, the more authority you naturally possess. Influence is not taken, it is attracted. It is magnetized by what you offer, not what you demand. The first principle of value-based influence is understanding the needs of others. If you desire influence that lasts, you must first see the world not through your own lens, but through the lens of those you seek to affect. What do they need? What do they fear? What keeps them awake at night? What aspirations stir their heart? Understanding these truths allows you to position your ideas, your leadership, your actions in alignment with the desires and needs of others. Too often, people attempt to impose solutions without understanding the problem. They lecture, they command, they pressure. And while such tactics may achieve short-term compliance, they fail to create connection, trust, or allegiance. Influence built on coercion is brittle. It cracks under scrutiny. It shatters under opposition. It disappears when choice is restored. When you approach others with empathy, when you position yourself as a problem solver rather than a dictator, when your primary focus is contribution rather than control, you enter the realm of authentic influence. You create a magnetic presence that draws people willingly to your vision. You move hearts and minds not by force, but by understanding, care, and insight. The second principle is delivering tangible value. Influence is never theoretical. It is never merely verbal. It is measured in results. People respond to what improves their lives, what elevates their position, what solves their problems. A politician who rallies speeches but delivers no meaningful policies may dominate headlines for a time, but the people will ultimately turn away. A business leader who promises innovation but fails to create products that matter will lose customers, employees, and trust. Tangible value creates loyalty. Tangible value earns respect. Tangible value builds influence that persists across time, across changes in circumstance, across generations. The individual who seeks to leave a lasting mark does not settle for words. They act. They create systems, solutions, products, services, ideas, and visions that produce measurable benefit. But value alone is not enough if it is not perceived. This brings us to the third principle, communicating value effectively. You may have the most brilliant ideas, the most transformative solutions, the most profound insights, yet if others do not understand them, your influence remains limited. Communication is the bridge between creation and impact. It is the conduit through which your value reaches the hearts and minds of those you seek to inspire. Effective communication is not about shouting louder, using more rhetoric, or employing clever tricks. It is about clarity, resonance, and authenticity. It is about translating complex ideas into simple, relatable truths. It is about speaking not just to minds, but to emotions. Influence that lasts is not the result of volume, but of resonance. When people hear you, understand you, and feel compelled by the worth of what you offer. The fourth principle is consistency in action. Influence is fragile when it is unpredictable. People trust and follow those whose actions match their words, whose principles are unwavering, whose dedication is evident not in bursts, but in a steady, relentless commitment to creating value. Coercion may produce temporary obedience, but inconsistency breeds doubt, suspicion, and rebellion. Consistency is not monotony. It is deliberate alignment of daily actions with your higher purpose, your vision, and the value you seek to provide. It is showing up even when it is difficult, even when recognition is absent, even when resistance is strong. The individual who consistently delivers value becomes a pillar in the lives of others. Their influence is no longer a matter of persuasion. It becomes a matter of expectation, reliance, and trust. The fifth principle is empowering others. True leaders do not hoard influence. They distribute it. They elevate others. They teach, mentor, guide, and create environments in which people can thrive. Influence that empowers multiplies exponentially because it is shared. Coercion diminishes, value multiplied grows. The person who builds others up creates loyalty, gratitude, and admiration, forces that no pressure or threat can replicate. Empowerment is not weakness. It is strategic. When you make others stronger, you build networks of capability that amplify your own impact. When you inspire initiative rather than demand obedience, you foster creativity, loyalty, and resilience. History is full of individuals who rose to lasting influence because they did not take power. They created it in others. The sixth principle is integrity as the foundation of influence. Value without integrity is temporary. Influence without principle is fleeting. Coercion may succeed in the short term, but it corrodes trust. People sense when motives are self-serving, when promises are empty, when actions contradict words. Integrity is the invisible currency that converts value into influence that lasts. Every decision you make, every action you take, every promise you honor or break contributes to the perception of your character. Influence built on coercion may bend reality, but it cannot change perception permanently. Influence built on integrity endures because it is grounded in truth, credibility, and ethical alignment. The seventh principle is the long-term perspective. Influence that lasts is never focused solely on the immediate. It sees beyond short-term gain, beyond fleeting recognition, beyond temporary victories. It seeks to create systems, cultures, and legacies that persist. Coercion is inherently short-sighted because it prioritizes immediate control. Value, on the other hand, is inherently forward-looking. It invests in the future, nurtures relationships, and constructs frameworks that endure. Consider the most influential figures in history. They did not achieve prominence by manipulating others for momentary advantage. They achieved prominence by building movements, institutions, and ideas that could withstand scrutiny, opposition, and the passage of time. Influence rooted in value multiplies because it is self-sustaining. It creates momentum that outlasts the individual. The eighth principle is resilience through adversity. Anyone seeking influence will encounter resistance. Anyone providing value will face criticism. Anyone attempting to shape minds will meet opposition. Coercion breaks down under adversity because it depends on fear, compliance, and control. Value, however, strengthens under adversity. When you continue to serve, to provide, to act ethically, even when challenged, your influence solidifies. It becomes a beacon. It becomes proof that your leadership is genuine. It becomes irresistible. The ninth principle is adaptability within principles. While integrity and vision are unchanging, the methods of providing value must be responsive to changing circumstances. Influence is not rigid. It evolves. It listens. It observes. It shifts strategies without compromising principles. Coercion fails because it is inflexible. Value-based influence thrives because it adjusts intelligently, meeting people where they are, addressing their evolving needs, and remaining relevant across contexts. The 10th principle is legacy and multiplication of influence. The ultimate measure of influence is not the number of followers you accumulate, the titles you hold, or the wealth you amass. It is the lives you transform, the leaders you inspire, the systems you improve, and the values you embed in others. Influence that lasts creates a ripple effect. It spreads through communities, organizations, and generations. Coercion leaves scars and resentment. Value leaves empowerment and gratitude. When you provide real value, when you act with consistency, integrity, and vision, when you empower others and adapt with wisdom, your influence becomes a force beyond your control. It continues to grow long after you have left the room, the stage, or even the earth itself. That is the ultimate power of value over coercion, the creation of influence that persists. And let me emphasize this: every field, every interaction, every endeavor offers the opportunity to choose between coercion and value. In business, in politics, in social movements, in personal relationships, the choice defines your destiny. Coercion may appear easier. It may produce immediate results. But results built on pressure, fear, or manipulation are fragile, short-lived, and hollow. Value, on the other hand, produces results that are resilient, meaningful, and admired. The application of this principle is not theoretical. It is practical. Begin by assessing the lives you touch. How much value do you provide? How many problems do you solve? How many people feel seen, heard, empowered, and inspired because of your presence and your work? Then ask yourself how often you rely on pressure, authority, or coercion to achieve compliance or temporary gain. Every moment you shift your focus toward value, you are building influence that cannot be stolen, cannot be contested, cannot be diminished. The key is to internalize this mindset. Value over coercion is not a strategy you employ occasionally. It is a philosophy you live. It shapes your decisions, your communication, your priorities, your relationship. It demands patience, discipline, empathy, courage, and vision. But the reward is influence that lasts, impact that multiplies, and a legacy that transcends the ephemeral. Understand this deeply: coercion may achieve obedience, but obedience is not respect. Coercion may enforce compliance, but compliance is not loyalty. Coercion may control actions, but it cannot inspire hearts. Value, however, does all of these and more. Value attracts followers who are committed, supporters who are loyal, collaborators who are invested, and communities that flourish. It transforms temporary advantage into permanent authority. And as you apply this principle in your life, you will notice a subtle, powerful shift. People begin to seek your counsel. They begin to trust your judgment. They begin to follow not because they must, but because they want to. Your ideas gain momentum because they are grounded in relevance, benefit, and clarity. Your leadership becomes magnetic. Your influence spreads organically, exponentially, inevitably. It is essential to recognize that the cultivation of value is continuous. Influence is not static. The world changes, circumstances shift, people grow, and challenges emerge. Those who rest on past achievements, those who rely on former authority or position, those who confuse coercion for control will see their influence wane. Influence that lasts requires constant renewal of value, constant engagement with the needs of others, constant refinement of communication, and constant alignment with principle. The ability to consistently create and deliver value is the true test of leadership. It distinguishes the temporary from the enduring, the shallow from the profound, the reactive from the visionary. It is the principle that turns ordinary individuals into leaders who inspire movements, transform organizations, and shape society. Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to share with you a truth so powerful, so transformative, that it can alter the trajectory of your life, your career, your business, and even the very society in which you live. This truth is simple in its expression, yet profound in its impact. It is the principle I call the strategic alliance advantage, the art, the science, and the mindset of building relationships that multiply your influence, your results, and your capacity to achieve the extraordinary. Too often, we underestimate the power of alliances. We see them merely as networking, as exchanging business cards, as joining a team for convenience. But a strategic alliance is far more than that. It is a deliberate, purposeful partnership between individuals, groups, or organizations that amplifies the potential of each participant, creating results that would be impossible to achieve alone. Think of the most successful leaders, innovators, and visionaries throughout history. They did not rise in isolation. They surrounded themselves with complementary minds, powerful collaborators, and allies who shared a vision greater than themselves. From the business empires of today to the movements that shape nations, success has always been built on strategic collaboration. To understand the advantage of strategic alliances, we must first understand the limitations of working alone. No matter how brilliant, talented, or determined you are, human capacity is inherently limited. Your time, energy, and resources are finite. You can learn, you can grow, and you can strive with relentless effort. But there is only so much one mind, one pair of hands, one body can achieve. A strategic alliance transcends these limits. It allows you to combine strengths with others, to cover weaknesses, to leverage resources you do not personally possess. It is the multiplication of effort, the exponential growth of opportunity, and the unlocking of potential hidden within networks and relationships. Now, you may ask, what makes an alliance strategic rather than simply convenient or casual? The difference lies in purpose, alignment, and complementary strength. A strategic alliance is not formed out of habit or convenience. It is intentional. It is built upon a clear understanding of mutual benefit, shared goals, and the recognition that together, the participants can achieve far more than alone. Consider this principle: the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is not just a phrase, it is a law of success, a law of human collaboration, and a law that governs every successful venture, every breakthrough, every extraordinary achievement. When two or more individuals align their efforts, their talents, and their resources, the results are magnified, amplified, and accelerated. But there is more to a strategic alliance than mere collaboration. There is a mindset, a psychology, a discipline that must be cultivated to harness its full power. The first step is clarity of purpose. Every alliance must be anchored in a clear vision. Without this clarity, alliances drift, become weak, or fracture under pressure. Both parties, or all parties, must know exactly what they are working toward, and they must believe in its value passionately and unambiguously. Second, there must be trust and integrity. A strategic alliance cannot thrive where suspicion, hidden agendas, or manipulation exist. Trust is the lubricant of collaboration. It allows communication to flow freely, ideas to be shared openly, and risks to be taken without fear of betrayal. Integrity ensures that the alliance is sustainable, that each participant honors commitments, and that success is built on a foundation that will withstand challenges, scrutiny, and adversity. Third, a strategic alliance requires complementary strengths. The power of collaboration is not in replicating what each participant already does well. It is in combining strengths to cover weaknesses. It is the alignment of talents so that the sum becomes greater than the parts. One partner may have vision and creativity. Another may have execution skills, resources, or networks. Together, they form a force capable of extraordinary impact. Let me share a truth you must internalize. Strategic alliances are not optional for those who aspire to greatness. They are essential. To attempt to achieve the highest levels of success alone is to invite unnecessary struggle, inefficiency, and limitation. To cultivate alliances, however, is to tap into forces far greater than yourself, to leverage resources you could never accumulate alone, and to accelerate your path to achievement. But strategic alliances are not without challenges. Many attempt them and fail because they approach the process superficially. They see alliances as transactional, as a given, take arrangement aimed solely at immediate gain. While there may be short-term benefits to such an approach, true strategic alliances are built for the long term, for mutual growth, and for shared vision. They require patience, careful selection, and the willingness to invest in the relationship beyond immediate outcomes. One of the greatest mistakes people make is forming alliances with the wrong partners. Not every collaboration will bring strength. Some will bring conflict, distraction, or even harm. Therefore, discernment is critical. Examine the character, the values, the goals, and the mindset of those you seek to align with. Ensure that your vision is compatible, that mutual respect exists, and that the alliance is grounded in principle, not merely convenience or opportunity. Another critical aspect is communication. Every strategic alliance must be nourished by clear, consistent, and honest communication. Misunderstandings, assumptions, and unspoken expectations are the silent killers of partnerships. By communicating openly, setting clear roles, responsibilities, and expectations, and maintaining alignment, you ensure that the alliance thrives even when challenges arise. Consider the role of reciprocity. A true strategic alliance is not one-sided. Both parties must give as much as they receive, and both must recognize the value of the other's contribution. This reciprocity creates balance, fairness, and sustainability. When each participant feels respected, valued, and empowered, the alliance becomes a force of unstoppable momentum. Now, let us turn to the application of strategic alliances in business, leadership, and even politics. In business, the most successful entrepreneurs do not operate in isolation. They form alliances with partners, mentors, investors, and teams. They understand that their vision can only reach its full potential when supported by complementary resources, expertise, and networks. In leadership, alliances are essential for influence. Leaders who attempt to guide alone without cultivating support, collaboration, or advisory networks often find their initiatives faltering. Strategic alliances allow leaders to extend their reach, amplify their message, and mobilize the efforts of others toward a common goal. In politics, the power of alliances cannot be overstated. Policy, legislation, and reform require coalitions, partnerships, and strategic relationships. Those who understand this law of power achieve far more than those who rely solely on individual effort, charisma, or authority. The most effective political figures are those who align with complementary forces, leverage shared interests, and build networks capable of executing vision on a national scale. Let me emphasize a critical point: the strategic alliance advantage is available to anyone who cultivates it. It is not reserved for the wealthy, the famous, or the privileged. Every individual has the capacity to identify allies, build partnerships, and leverage relationships in pursuit of meaningful goals. The difference lies in awareness, initiative, and discipline. Awareness requires understanding the value of alliances and actively seeking opportunities to collaborate. Initiative requires reaching out, proposing alignment, and demonstrating willingness to invest in the relationship. Discipline requires maintaining the partnership, nurturing it over time, and ensuring that it remains aligned with purpose and principle. Strategic alliances also amplify resilience. When challenges arise, when obstacles threaten progress, a strong network of aligned partners provides support, advice, and resources. Isolation magnifies vulnerability. Collaboration multiplies strength. Those who fail to form alliances face the weight of every challenge alone, while those who cultivate strong partnerships share the burden and the triumph. Another advantage of strategic alliances is innovation through diversity. When you collaborate with individuals who bring different perspectives, skills, and experiences, you open the door to creative solutions that you could never discover alone. Ideas collide, combine, and evolve into breakthroughs. This is the engine of progress in business, science, leadership, and social change. Consider the law of mutual accountability. In a strategic alliance, Partners hold each other accountable to high standards, to commitments, and to the shared vision. This accountability drives performance, discipline, and consistency. It ensures that each participant is operating at their highest potential and that the alliance is continuously moving toward its objectives. But alliances must also be adaptive. No matter how well aligned partners are at the outset, circumstances change, markets shift, and opportunities evolve. The most successful alliances are those that adapt without losing their core purpose. Flexibility, open-mindedness, and ongoing dialogue ensure that the partnership remains effective, relevant, and impactful. Now, let us explore the mindset required to fully leverage the strategic alliance advantage. First, you must shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Too many people view partnerships as competitions for resources, recognition, or control. In reality, true alliances are built on the understanding that the success of one contributes to the success of all. Abundance allows collaboration to flourish because each participant sees opportunity rather than threat. Second, embrace generosity of spirit. Offer value to your partners without expectation of immediate return. Share your knowledge, your resources, your connections. When you invest in others sincerely, they will invest in you. Trust, loyalty, and reciprocity grow from generosity, and these are the foundation of long-lasting, high-impact alliances. Third, cultivate patience and persistence. Strategic alliances are rarely instantaneous in their impact. They require time to develop trust, align vision, and synchronize efforts. Those who expect immediate results become frustrated, disengaged, or disillusioned. Those who commit for the long term reap exponential benefits that extend far beyond initial expectations. Fourth, commit to lifelong learning within your alliances. Every partnership is an opportunity to expand knowledge, gain insight, and refine skills. Pay attention to your partner's strengths, observe their strategies, and absorb lessons from their experience. The alliance becomes not only a source of shared power, but also a catalyst for personal growth. Let me share a truth seldom spoken. Alliances often determine the trajectory of your life more than individual effort alone. Look at history, look at business, look at politics. Behind every great achievement is a web of strategic partnerships, mentors, collaborators, and trusted advisors. Success is rarely a solo endeavor. It is the outcome of carefully cultivated relationships aligned around purpose. And yet, most people neglect this advantage. They operate in isolation, they hoard knowledge, they compete unnecessarily, and they fail to recognize the potential in collaboration. They underestimate the exponential power of aligned effort. They ignore the simple fact that a well-chosen partner can transform challenges into opportunities, accelerate growth, and expand influence far beyond what is imaginable alone. To harness the strategic alliance advantage, you must become intentional in your relationships. Seek out individuals whose vision complements yours, whose skills fill gaps in your own, and whose values resonate with your principles. Approach them with clarity, integrity, and a spirit of mutual benefit. Demonstrate the value you bring, and be willing to invest time, energy, and resources in nurturing the connection. Strategic alliances also demand resilience in the face of setbacks. Conflicts may arise, misunderstandings may occur, and external pressures may challenge the partnership. Those who persevere, communicate, and recommit to shared objectives strengthen not only the alliance, but also their own capacity for leadership and influence. The power of a strategic alliance is amplified when you combine it with visionary leadership. Leaders who can articulate a compelling purpose, inspire others, and align multiple stakeholders create momentum that propels the alliance toward extraordinary results. Leadership without collaboration is limited. Collaboration without leadership lacks direction. Together, they create a force capable of shaping industries, communities, and nations. Finally, recognize that the impact of strategic alliances extends beyond immediate goals. Every partnership carries the potential to influence systems, create new opportunities, and leave a legacy. By aligning with the right individuals, you contribute to a ripple effect that extends far beyond your own life, your own success, and your immediate sphere of influence. The strategic alliance advantage is a law of success that transcends time, industry, and circumstance. It is a principle that separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who struggle in isolation. It is the silent multiplier of effort, the amplifier of vision, and the hidden force behind every great achievement. To ignore it is to limit your potential. To embrace it is to unlock doors that lead to opportunities, growth, and influence beyond imagination. It requires clarity of purpose, integrity, complementary strengths, trust, communication, reciprocity, adaptability, and the discipline to nurture relationships over the long term. It demands a mindset of abundance, generosity, patience, persistence, and lifelong learning. And so, I challenge you to examine your own life, your own endeavors, your own vision. Where are the alliances you have neglected? Where are the opportunities for collaboration you have overlooked? Where are the strengths you could multiply by aligning with others? Imagine the possibilities when two brilliant minds, each with unique talents, unite with a shared purpose. Imagine the exponential results when resources are combined, efforts synchronized, and vision aligned. Imagine the breakthroughs, the innovations, the influence that could be generated when strategic alliances are pursued with discipline, courage, and clarity. This is not theory. It is not abstract philosophy. It is a practical law observable in every corner of success, from business partnerships that create billion-dollar enterprises to social movements that transform nations, from political coalitions that enact historic legislation to creative collaborations that revolutionize culture. The evidence is everywhere. Your challenge, your opportunity, and your advantage lie in recognizing that no one achieves greatness alone. Power, influence, results, and legacy are amplified exponentially through aligned effort. The person who ignores this law struggles alone. The person who embraces it accelerates beyond expectation. The person who masters it not only achieves success, but shapes the future in ways that would be impossible alone. And in a world where complexity increases daily, where competition grows fiercer, and where opportunity and threat exist side by side, the strategic alliance advantage becomes not merely a tool for success, but a necessity. It is the difference between stagnation and momentum, between mediocrity and extraordinary achievement, between frustration and fulfillment. Those who understand this law do not wait for opportunities to appear. They create them through collaboration. They do not fear competition because they leverage alliances to amplify their strength. They do not settle for incremental results because aligned effort multiplies impact. They do not shy away from challenges because together obstacles become manageable and vision becomes unstoppable